Today's reading is from Luke 16, 19 to 31. There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and who feasted sumptuously every day. And at his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who longed to satisfy his hunger with what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs would come and lick his sores. The poor man died and was carried away by the angels to be with Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried. In Hades, where he was being tormented, he looked up and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. He called out, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in agony in these flames." But Abraham said, "Child, remember that during your lifetime you received your good things, and Lazarus in like manner evil things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. Besides all this, between you and us a great chasm has been fixed, so that those who might want to pass from here to you cannot do so, and no one can cross from there to us." He said, "Then, Father, I beg you to send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, that he may warn them, so that they will not also come into this place of torment." Abraham replied, "They have Moses and the prophets, they should listen to them." He said, "No, Father Abraham, but if someone goes to them from the dead, they will repent." He said to him, "If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be convinced, even if someone rises from the dead." Herein lies our reading.
Don't move. Friends, there are a handful of movies that I watch on particular days because the days are important. There's one coming up in April for my millennial friends who love Empire Records. Anyway, the rest are in the fall. But there is one that I watch when I'm putting up the Christmas tree every year, and sometimes I watch it here on the big screen when I'm here by myself because it sounds like fun. Now, there are many, many versions of the Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, and there is one that is absolutely, by far, superior to the rest of them. It is The Muppets Christmas Carol. It is a flawless film, or adaptation of the Charles Dickens movie, the story anyway, save for one thing. When our actors, Statler and Waldorf, are playing the parts of Jacob and Robert Marley, they sing a song to Ebenezer Scrooge about the chains that they are carrying with their lockboxes and ledgers that they forged in life by their values and their actions, and that Scrooge himself is forging his own chains in his life with his actions. In the middle of their song, they sing, "Doom, Scrooged." I'm not going to sing it. "You're doomed for all time. Your future is a horror story written by your crime." The problem is Ebenezer Scrooge did not commit any crimes. He was fastidious about following every single rule. He committed no crimes. That, of course, did not make him a kind or generous person, or notice the needs of those around him. It was wondered this week if maybe Scrooge is a response to our parable today, because the Bible stories would have been part of the milieu of the Victorian England era. And so when Abraham tells the rich man that even the dead coming back to life would never convince the brothers, Charles Dickens said, "I get paid by the word. I bet I can do it." Now, we don't know if Charles Dickens used the story of Lazarus as a model, or if he understood. Did I take a picture of that? Nope, I didn't. Or if he was really excited and had some future premonition of Gonzo telling the story to Rizzo the rat for us. What we do know is that Charles Dickens was disappointed and felt deeply terrible about what was happening in the Victorian world around him, that it was changing for the worse. He was concerned about issues of debt and debtors and lenders. His father had spent time in a debtor's prison. He was concerned about the conditions of the poor and the working class, about the ever-growing wage gap between the wealthy and the poor, and the use of child labor. He wanted to write a story that could instigate social reform. And, according to the internet, so it must be true, it did. The Victorian England people loved the story so much of the reformed Scrooge that there was an increase in charitable giving and an awareness of the plight of the poor. I do wonder if Jesus' parable was anywhere near as successful as Charles's. The Lazarus in our story today bears no connection to the Lazarus we meet in John, who is the brother of Mary and Martha, whom Jesus raises from the dead on his way to Jerusalem in the Gospel of John, whom Kelly remembered as a zombie. I was going to say it if you were here or not. It's just a name for our story. And in all of Jesus' parables, this is the only one that has a name. Lazarus comes from the Hebrew name Eleazar, which means God is my helper, or the one who God helps, which we might call ironic because we first meet Lazarus starving and weak, laying outside the gated walls of a rich man's house, desperate for whatever scraps might fall from his table after they had filled their own stomachs to the brim. Now, being just outside the gate lends me to believe that the rich man had seen Lazarus. When the rich man left his house, did he avert his eyes so he didn't have to see Lazarus? Did he walk around the back door so he didn't have to cross paths with Lazarus? Did he tell his servants not to gather up the garbage, the scraps, the leftovers from the table so that they wouldn't give it to Lazarus, which would make him cruel, not just thoughtless? Far more cruel than if he just averted his eyes. He's kind of like the rest of us when we're driving down the road sometimes and we see someone asking for money and we just stare straight ahead, which is an absolutely easy low blow because most of us want to do something about hunger and poverty and homelessness, but there are issues and there are needs that seem so vast that we're not sure we can do anything about them. It seems just as impossible to do something with them as it would be for Lazarus or the rich man to cross the chasm. Now, it may come as no surprise to you that I have opinions about empires. And in my opinion, the empire, the powers, the principalities of this world, which do include the incredibly wealthy, in my opinion, they would like us to believe there are chasms everywhere. They would like us to function as if there are chasms between us, probably between all of us, but certainly between us and anyone different than us. It was done through the strategic work of redlining, of demonizing integrated schools, of supporting white flight that kept black and white communities separate from each other, and then from ongoing rhetoric, racist rhetoric, demonizing the poor of one race against another race, that keeps the poor from uniting and becoming their own community with their shared causes. There is a chasm between the products that we buy and those who make them. Those who grow and harvest, those who sow and mine, thousands of miles away from the groceries where we just pick them off the shelf and put them in our cart so easily. When the outcry of blood diamonds calmed down, it became the same people in power and the same communities of people who had been doing the mining who are now mining minerals that make our technology, our phones, that we upgrade every 2 years. Because that's what they say we should do, and they make it so that you have to, and who doesn't want the newest, funnest thing? Many of our coffee-growing countries are decimated for the sake of the crop, growing coffee and other produce on ground that cannot sustain that kind of farming that they're doing. And so the land becomes fallow, and the forests are destroyed, and coffee is often picked the same way as cacao, which is by children and slaves. And a company like Nestle's isn't held responsible because they don't own the land, and they don't contract or hire or force the laborers. They just buy the man. They just buy the product. There was a lawsuit. Nestle's won. They don't use their power and influence to close the chasm, which is, of course, a good reminder to buy fair trade, which might be important in the season of Easter, which is all about hollow chocolate bunnies and Easter eggs. Poor women and men are still making our garments. Presumably, the less you spend on an item, the more likely it is that it's not being made with materials, with ethical materials or sustainable materials or by ethical means. And on the other end, when we're done with what we purchased, we'll stay here, 5 to 6% of the plastics in the United States are recycled. And as a millennial, again, who was told and taught, reduce, reuse, recycle, I feel like I was lied to by everyone. Our clothing consumption has skyrocketed with the rise of fast fashion, and our per-wear article of clothing is significantly down. And we think we're doing a good thing by donating our old clothes and fabrics and textiles to Goodwill or whatever, but 700,000 tons of waste, our textiles, are shipped overseas, and 10 million tons, or 62% of our textiles, fill our landfills. And we're buying poor quality clothes, generally made of polyester and spandex, so they're still there. You can spot enough lies about our immigration and our queer communities. You can villainize and demonize anyone. Our politics are claiming there are two sides with very clear dogmas that you have to follow. And if you tarry from one way or the other, you might not be part of our group anymore. You might as well be the enemy. I think our powers of our time want us to believe there are only two options, and we should always villainize the other side. The powers of this world want us to look at people who are different as if they are unreachable, because the powers of this world want you to see the poor and the vulnerable, those who are struggling, those who are being taken off the street by law enforcement unmarked. They want us to feel small in the face of all of this. They want us to feel like Lazarus, who seems like he wants to help the rich man on the other side, but can't get there, as there is a chasm that keeps us from helping the others to get to them. Keeps us from helping, keeps us from generosity, keeps us from trying, because the problem seems so big and so far away, and we feel so small. And I think if the rich man, if anyone walked by Lazarus, walked by the poor and the vulnerable every day, the first time you might notice, you might get that feeling in your gut, your spleen, if you will. And if you do nothing, the next time maybe that feeling is a little less. And the third time you turn your head and don't even notice. And the fourth time you scooch over so you don't have to walk by. The fifth time you walk out the back door. I think the more you say less to empathy and compassion, the easier it is to say no to empathy and compassion. And they want you to say no. They want you to be overwhelmed to the point of paralysis as you look at the depth and the distance between us. And when our characters die, because we cannot escape death, we hear this description of what we might call heaven and hell, but Jesus just calls Hades. It seems like they're in the same place. The land of the dead for the Greeks, where one is tormented and the other has been received. The proper translation is the bosom of Abraham. But we don't say bosom anymore because it makes someone uncomfortable. So they say side, which is way less compassionate. And Jesus had said earlier that blessed are the poor, for they shall be comforted. And Abraham's bosom seems like a comfortable place. And they are not in this situation because Lazarus was more righteous than the rich man. These aren't punishments and rewards for the lives that they had. It's just that the rich man had been comforted his whole life while Lazarus had none. It does make you wonder if it's just the rich man had normal death life and it just wasn't as special as he thought it would be. When the rich man asks Abraham to send Lazarus, because he doesn't ask Lazarus to go. When he asks Abraham to send Lazarus to his brothers, Abraham says they won't believe him and they have everything they already need. The law was given so the people of Israel could learn how to live in community together. And among many of the other things it says you should not have more than you need when there are still people around you who do not have what they need. And in the times when they fail to live into the law, because they're humans just like us who fail to do the things, the prophets came and reminded them that God didn't want their worship even while there were still some who were hungry. The brothers already had everything they needed. Now, this isn't a call, as some in Bible study thought, to sell, not that they thought, but it's an overwhelming story. To give all you have, to sell all you have and give it to the poor. I think this is a call to be aware. To see where you have placed a canyon between you and someone else and notice the space between yourself and others. Whether it is by demeaning them when they're called names, by narrowing them down to a few stereotypes, by making sure you don't know who made the products that you're buying or planted the seeds of the food that came into your home. They want you to believe you can't do anything about it when people are snatched off the streets. They want you to feel hopeless. They want you to cross to the other side of the street, to drive in a different direction so you don't have to be uncomfortable. Even better, maybe you could self-soothe yourself by buying more things that increase the separation between yourself and someone else. But here's the truth. We probably wouldn't consider ourselves the rich man in his purple, extravagant clothing and his fancy underpants, because that's what the linen translates to. But we have everything we need. And in our stories, and our God tells us that each and every person is made in the image of God. And that what defines the value of a person is that, being made in the image of God, not what they have or produce or whatever else we might think makes someone valuable. And we have Jesus teaching and reminding the disciples and us that the call of the law and the prophets is to love God with everything that you are, and I think that means all that you have and all that you spend and collect, and to love your neighbor as yourself, and to be a good neighbor to those in need. And we have the internet, which can let us do research on things that we buy and where we invest our time and our energy and our money, so that maybe our choices are both economical and care for creation, including the people in it. All that God loves. How do we be good neighbors? How do we have enough? Can we give to one great hour of sharing? Yes, we can. That's today. So that food and support and disaster relief can be given or continued in places where it's needed. But can we also work towards a world where we're not supporting systems that separate us from each other, that keep some pushed down and keep the poor and the vulnerable poor and vulnerable, and instead work towards and live in and co-create the kingdom of God with God here and now together? And I am not perfect at this. I am working very hard to slowly reduce the amount of plastic in the bathroom, including like cardboard tubes that are compostable with chapstick and lotion in them. I'm really excited about this. And makeup in cardboard, I'm so excited about this. But trying really hard. And then we go to Costco. And it's like Costco has invested in plastic. We're doing what we can. We keep trying. But can we try to not put new canyons where there aren't any yet? Can we avoid making them bigger by coming together? Can we find a way to walk around them as if they're a whole and not spreading the whole length of the earth? Maybe find a bridge. Find a bridge and comfort and care for the poor, the lost, the vulnerable, to show up, to hold a hand, to bridge the gap, to offer companionship, community, compassion, and love. Because we have everything we need, and we have a God for whom nothing is impossible and who is our help. So friends, before we sing our song, italics, bold, will you join me in a liturgy? Happy are we, this is you. Happy are we when we care for those who are poor, not just by giving a handout, not just